I've handled gunshot wounds, strokes, mid-slight, even a guy who tried to superglue his own stitches, but nothing in my ER career prepared me for what a rhinestone caftan and a clipboard could do to a dying neighbor. My name's Clayton. I moved to Briarwood Point thinking it'd be quiet, gardeners, dog walkers, HOA newsletters. Then, one sunny Tuesday, a woman collapsed in her garden and the ambulance got blocked by the very people meant to keep the neighborhood safe. If you've ever watched someone fight for their life while bureaucracy throws a hissy fit in sequins, you'll want to hear this. Drop a comment where you're watching from, because what started with CPR turned into a showdown involving helicopters, HOA tantrums, and a woman who thought bylaws outranked basic humanity. "Evelyn?" I called out, finding her crumpled beside her flower bed, her soft blue cardigan stark against the vibrant green lawn. No response. I checked her pulse, weak, thready, and immediately pulled out my phone, dialing 911 while positioning her properly. "This is Clayton Merritt. I'm an ER nurse at Crestview General. My neighbor's collapsed, likely cardiac event, 68-year-old female with known heart condition, need immediate assistance at 1322 Briarwood Lane." I dropped my phone on speaker mode and began CPR, the dispatcher's voice providing a steady rhythm to my compressions. My training kicked in, the world narrowing to just Evelyn's pale face and my hands pushing steadily on her chest, sweat already beading on my forehead in the unforgiving sun. Time slowed to the space between heartbeats, my count measured and precise. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe. It took exactly 7 minutes for the ambulance to reach our street. I know, because I counted every second. But what happened next defied all logic and human decency. The ambulance's siren grew closer, then abruptly stopped at the entrance to our cul-de-sac. I looked up, my hands never breaking rhythm on Evelyn's chest. There, blocking the ambulance's path like some garish sentinel, stood Audra Fenton, our homeowners association president, her neon pink caftan billowing around her as she waved a clipboard with the authority of someone directing traffic at the apocalypse. "No emergency vehicles without prior approval. This is a direct violation of HOA Rule 42, she screeched, rhinestone sandals planted firmly on the asphalt, her frizzy bun bobbing with each emphatic shake of her head. The paramedics were arguing with her, their faces displaying that unique mixture of disbelief and fury that Audra seemed to inspire wherever she went. "Move the damn vehicle," I shouted, continuing compressions. "She's dying." Audra turned toward me, her overly contoured face twisting into a smirk that made my blood run cold. "Maybe you should have thought about emergencies before you parked in the visitor spot last month, Clayton. Actions have consequences." She tapped her clipboard meaningly, the sun glinting off her gaudy rings. I realized with horror that this was personal. She was holding a grudge because I'd once challenged her ridiculous parking restrictions. Neighbors began appearing on their lawns, drawn by the commotion, but no one intervened. They stood frozen, unwilling to cross the woman who could make their lives miserable with fines and violation notices. Under my hands, Evelyn's pulse weakened further. The paramedics were still trapped at the entrance, their vehicle unable to navigate around Audra's deliberately parked SUV with its custom HOBOS license plate. "You're ruining our aesthetic with these loud emergency vehicles," Audra continued, gesturing dramatically at the quiet, manicured street. "Property values are at stake." Sweat stung my eyes as I maintained compressions, my arms beginning to ache with the effort. With one hand, I grabbed my phone and hit speed dial for Dr. Patel, my supervisor at the hospital. "Sir, I need a medevac at 1322 Briarwood Lane immediately. HOA president is blocking ground access. Patient is critical." Dr. Patel didn't waste time asking questions. He knew me well enough to trust my judgment. "Helicopter dispatched. ETA 12 minutes. I set the phone down, locking eyes with Audra, who had moved closer, her face contorted with indignation. "Did you just call a helicopter?" she hissed, eyes widening in outrage. "That's against at least 7 different HOA noise regulations." My jaw tightened as I continued working on Evelyn, her life literally in my hands. "You picked the wrong fight, Audra," I managed through gritted teeth, my fingers aching against Evelyn's ribs. The thought of losing her, the kind woman who had welcomed me with homemade cookies when I'd moved in after my breakup, fueled a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. I could see the realization dawning on Audra's heavily made-up face that I had found a workaround to her blockade. Without missing a beat, she pulled out her phone and began furiously texting what I assumed was her circle of HOA cronies. "This isn't over, Clayton," she threatened, her voice carrying across the now silent street. "Not by a long shot." As she marched away, her flamingo print caftan fluttering behind her like a battle flag, I quickly texted Reed Harlan, a firefighter who reluctantly attended HOA meetings. Need dirt on Audra, emergency, life at stake. I kept my focus on Evelyn, counting compressions and willing her to hang on, but I was acutely aware of Audra's frantic activity at the edge of my vision. Within minutes, she had assembled a small contingent of HOA board members, their expressions ranging from confused to zealously supportive as she jabbed her finger in my direction. He's attempting to circumvent our noise ordinances and landing regulations, she announced, her voice carrying across the lawns with practiced authority. Section 7.3 clearly states that no aircraft may land within the boundaries of Briarwood Point without written approval from the board, submitted 14 business days in advance with the proper forms in triplicate. The absurdity of her statement might have been comical if Evelyn's life wasn't hanging in the balance. Then came the crackling static of the neighborhood emergency alert system. Speakers installed during COVID for community announcements, now hijacked for Audra's personal crusade. Attention Briarwood Point residents. Her voice boomed through the outdoor speaker mounted on the lamppost. This is an emergency, public health and safety alert. Resident Clayton Merritt is attempting to violate our airspace with an unauthorized medical transport. This represents a new type of community health threat. One person's disregard for proper channels endangers all of us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was using the emergency system designed to warn about tornadoes to turn the community against a medical evacuation. She's posting on the neighborhood forum, a voice said from behind me. I glanced up to see Blythe Carver, our resident videographer, her camera already rolling. She tilted her screen so I could glimpse Audra's post. Emergency alert. Reckless resident Clayton Merritt attempting unauthorized helicopter landing. Potential damage to property values. Blythe knelt down beside me, her camera still recording. What can I do to help? She asked quietly, her eyes serious behind her stylish glasses. Keep documenting, I replied between breaths, and call the hospital. Tell them Audra is trying to block the helicopter too. Blythe nodded, grabbing my phone. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through notifications. Clayton, she's gone full propaganda machine. She sent out an email blast calling this a rogue medical intervention. She turned her camera toward me. I think we need to fight fire with fire. Let me start a 3-part live series. I can title it Karen Blocks Helicopter Rescue. It'll draw attention fast. I nodded my agreement, impressed by her quick thinking. Do it. Make sure you catch the emergency speakers too. That's abuse of community resources. Blythe immediately set to work, positioning herself to capture both Evelyn and Audra in the background. She spoke quietly but clearly into her camera. Part 1 of our special series, HOA President Blocks Emergency Medical Transport. I'm live at Briarwood Point, where HOA President Audra Fenton is actively preventing emergency services from reaching a cardiac patient. In the distance, I could hear Audra rallying her supporters. He's the same troublemaker who questioned our seasonal decoration policy last Christmas. Where does it end, people? Today it's helicopters, tomorrow it's pink flamingo rights. Blythe returned with bad news. Audra emailed the hospital, claiming you're creating a public hazard. She CC'd the county aviation board. The helicopter is temporarily delayed. My heart sank, but my hands never faltered. Damn bureaucracy, I muttered. She's willing to let someone die over her power trip? Time was running out. More neighbors had gathered, clearly torn between concern for Evelyn and fear of Audra's retaliation. We need to play her game, I said to Blythe. Can you find any violations Audra herself has committed? Blythe's eyes lit up at the challenge. Already on it, she replied, scanning Audra's property with her camera. Those birds might be our ticket. According to the HOA guidelines, no lawn ornaments exceeding 12 inches in height or featuring reflective surfaces are permitted. Those flamingos are definitely over 12 inches, and they're practically mirror finished. A small smile crossed my face despite the situation. Audra, tripped up by her own ridiculous rules, there was a certain poetry to it. I have an idea for part 2 of the series, Blythe said. Let's title it Rules for Thee, Not for Me, and highlight the flamingo violation alongside footage of her blocking the ambulance. A paramedic finally pushed through the crowd, equipment in hand. We left the ambulance and came on foot, he explained. That woman's still blocking the road. Relief flooded through me as they took over, establishing an IV line. The steady beep of Evelyn's heart was the most beautiful sound I'd heard all day. As the paramedics worked, I stepped back, my arms trembling. Blythe showed me her phone. The live stream is going viral. And look at this comment. I'm an attorney specializing in emergency services obstruction. This is illegal. Before I could respond, Audra appeared with an official-looking document. This is a formal notice of violation for creating a public disturbance and damaging community harmony. The fine is $500. She thrust the paper at my chest, her eyes narrowing. Maybe next time you'll think twice before challenging the established order of Briarwood Point. The emergency HOA meeting was called for 7 o'clock that evening, barely 4 hours after Evelyn had been airlifted to Crestview General. I hadn't even had time to shower, my scrubs still bearing the evidence of my efforts to save her life. The meeting room, actually just the community clubhouse with its aging furniture and faded photographs of past HOA presidents, was packed by the time I arrived. Audra sat at the head of the table like a judge presiding over a high-profile case. Her sequined caftan exchanged for an equally garish blouse in electric blue, a gavel-like paperweight positioned meaningfully before her. She tapped her clipboard as I entered, her lips curling into what I supposed was meant to be a smile, but looked more like a grimace. "Ah, the man of the hour," she announced. "Mr. Merritt, so kind of you to grace us with your presence, especially considering your eventful day." There were titters from her supporters, strategically positioned at the front of the room. I noticed Reed and Blythe sitting in the back, offering subtle nods of encouragement. Next to them sat Harold, Audra's accountant, a nervous-looking man who kept checking his watch. Interesting, he'd never attended these meetings before. "I'm here to request emergency approval for the medical helicopter," I stated firmly. "Mrs. Dorsey is in critical condition and may need to be transferred to a specialized cardiac facility." Audra's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Oh my, you mean you want us to approve something after you've already taken action? That's not how rules work, Mr. Merritt." "This is about a woman's life," I countered, struggling to keep my voice level. "Surely that takes precedence over procedural formalities." Audra's expression hardened. "What takes precedence, Mr. Merritt, is the orderly functioning of our community. Anarchy benefits no one." She moved to a whiteboard where she had prepared a detailed presentation titled "The Case Against Clayton Merritt, Neighborhood Anarchist." She had actually prepared a PowerPoint-style prosecution, complete with bullet points and clip art. "Clayton Merritt moved to Briarwood Point 18 months ago," she began, adopting the tone of a prosecutor. "Since then, he has accumulated a disturbing record of non-compliance, including unauthorized garbage can placement, failure to submit paint color samples before touching up his front door, and now attempting to land an aircraft without proper permits." Her vice president proposed a $5,000 fine, and Audra added, "And I've taken the liberty of drafting a petition for Mr. Merritt's eviction from Briarwood Point." I stepped forward, facing the room. Today, I performed CPR on Evelyn Dorsey for nearly 20 minutes. She's a retired school counselor who has lived in this community for over 30 years. She was in cardiac arrest. Without immediate medical attention, she would have died. When the ambulance was blocked, Audra interrupted with a sharp tap of her paperweight. "Redirected, not blocked, for proper procedural review." I ignored her. "When the ambulance was prevented from reaching her, I called for air transport because her life was in danger. I would do it again for any one of you, including you, Audra." Before she could recover, I caught sight of Harold shifting uncomfortably, a manila folder clutched in his hands. Our eyes met, and he gave me an almost imperceptible nod. I continued, "Now I have something else to address." Blythe connected her tablet to the projector, showing a close-up image of Audra's metal flamingos. According to HOA Regulation 17.5, no lawn ornaments exceeding 12 inches in height or featuring reflective surfaces are permitted. These flamingos clearly violate that rule. Audra's face flushed. "Those are artisanal garden sculptures, not lawn ornaments," she sputtered. Blythe showed a video feed from the hospital where Evelyn lay in her bed. Evelyn's voice filled the room. "I just wanted to thank Clayton. The doctors say without his quick action I wouldn't be here. In 30 years at Briarwood Point, I've never seen such kindness or such pettiness." Reed pointed out that interfering with emergency services was illegal, and the county was interested in why an ambulance was prevented from reaching a critical patient. Audra fumbled with her phone, projecting a blurry image that supposedly showed me running over a curb. "This is ridiculous," I started to say, when Harold suddenly stood up. I have something to say," he announced, his voice shaking. "It's about Mrs. Dorsey. 6 months ago, you instructed me to remove her name from the community's emergency medical priority list." A collective gasp went through the room, Harold continued. "You said it would reduce our community insurance premiums. I have the amended document here, with your signature." He held up a paper with Evelyn's name crossed out, Audra's flamboyant signature at the bottom. You told me it was routine administrative housekeeping, but I checked. We saved exactly $0 in premiums. You removed her right after she questioned your decision to replant the community garden with ornamental plants instead of vegetables. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Audra's face had gone white. That's a complete fabrication, she stammered, but Harold wasn't finished. I've been keeping records of everything, including the fact that my salary has been delayed for 3 months now. Reed examined the documents before passing them to board members. Deliberately removing someone from emergency protocols could be considered criminal negligence. My phone buzzed with a message from the hospital. Due to community complaints, your employment status is under review. The room continued to debate, but all I could think about was the potential impact on my career. My throat tightened, but Evelyn's frail smile from the video feed steadied me. I was doing the right thing, even if it came at a personal cost. My eyes hardened as I looked directly at Audra. Go ahead with your fines and petitions, but I'd make the same choice again tomorrow because some things matter more than rules on a clipboard. Morning brought no relief from Audra's campaign against me. The County Aviation Board had put a hold on any further helicopter landings in Briarwood Point, citing community concerns. I received this news while checking on Evelyn at the hospital before my disciplinary meeting. She was stable but fragile, her heart having suffered significant damage. They want to transfer me to Mercy Memorial for specialty care, she explained softly. They have a cardiac unit that could help, but she didn't need to finish. Without helicopter transport, the hour-long ambulance ride over bumpy county roads posed its own risks. My disciplinary meeting went about as well as expected. The hospital administrator shuffled papers importantly as she detailed the community complaints they'd received. Mr. Merritt, while we appreciate your dedication to patient care, we cannot have our staff members causing disputes that reflect poorly on this institution. Ms. Fenton has provided extensive documentation of your disruptive tendencies. I sat rigidly in the uncomfortable chair. I was performing CPR on a cardiac arrest patient when Ms. Fenton blocked emergency services from reaching her. I stated flatly, "Would you prefer I had let my neighbor die to avoid a dispute?" The administrator's expression soured. "That's hardly the point. The point is the unauthorized helicopter call." As she continued listing my alleged infractions, my mind drifted to the Hutchinson case 3 years ago. Elderly patient, massive heart attack in a restaurant. I'd performed CPR for 22 minutes, saved his life but cracked 3 ribs, standard collateral damage in proper CPR. His family had been outraged, filing a complaint and threatening to sue. "You broke him," his daughter had screamed, ignoring my explanation that broken ribs were common and far preferable to death. The case was eventually dismissed, but the memory had left a mark. I'd second-guessed my technique for months afterward, wondering if I'd been too aggressive. I was placed on administrative review, effectively probation that could jeopardize my position if any further complaints were received. This was playing out like the Hutchinson case all over again, doing everything right but still being punished for it. The difference was, this time I wasn't going to back down. When I returned to Briarwood Point, the situation had deteriorated further. Audra had rallied her HOA loyalists to physically monitor my street. 3 of her cronies sat in lawn chairs at the entrance to my cul-de-sac, obviously watching for any sign of emergency vehicles. Audra herself was performing a routine inspection of Evelyn's empty house, her clipboard in hand as she documented violations. My blood boiled when I saw her deliberately knock over a ceramic birdhouse that Evelyn had painted herself. "Oops," she said loudly, noticing me watching. "Structural instability, another violation to add to the growing list." I confronted her, my patience reaching its breaking point. "You're killing her," I said, my voice low but intense. "Your petty power games are preventing a woman from getting the medical care she needs. Does that make you feel important?" Something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty, perhaps, but was quickly replaced by defensiveness. "I'm simply upholding the standards that make Briarwood Point desirable. If people don't like the rules, they shouldn't live here." With the aviation board stalling and Audra's minions monitoring for ambulances, our options were dwindling. I slumped onto my porch steps, my hands shaking slightly from stress. Could I have saved Evelyn faster? The memory of the ethics board review after the Hutchinson case flashed through my mind. A senior doctor warning about the dangers of circumventing protocol. "The road to hell is paved with good intentions, Merritt. Stick to the rule book." That advice had haunted me for years, but as I stared at the broken pieces of Evelyn's birdhouse, I made my decision. This wasn't just about saving Evelyn anymore. It was about standing up to petty tyranny, about not letting another patient suffer because someone decided rules mattered more than lives. It was about redeeming myself for all the times I'd wondered if I should have pushed harder. Screw rules. She lives. I called Jason, a helicopter pilot friend. Can we reroute to Crestview Park? It's just outside the HOA boundaries. Jason replied, it's unorthodox, but doable. We set the transport for tomorrow morning. Blythe approached with news. Audra's heading to the park. I think someone tipped her off about your plan. My heart sank, but there was no time to investigate. Keep filming everything, I told her. My phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. I'm Liam, Mrs. Dorsey's neighbor's grandson. I'm a law student, been following the HOA drama. Can I help? I responded. Can you check the HOA bylaws for anything about emergency medical transport? His reply came quickly. On it, already posted on the law school Discord group. Another text from Liam came through. Found something. HOA can't legally override county emergency services. Also, the official bylaws filed with the county differ from the ones on your HOA website. Section on medical emergencies appears altered. Sending screenshots now. The images showed clear differences between the official document and Audra's version. The County Fellard version specifically stated that no HOA regulations shall impede emergency medical services, while Audra's version had omitted this critical sentence. Reed brought more news. That rumor about the HOA finances, it's more than a rumor. My buddy in the county clerk's office did some digging. There's $10,000 missing from the HOA accounts, all authorized by Audra for community improvements that no one's ever seen. This was potentially game-changing. I texted Liam back. Thanks for the info. Can you keep digging? Particularly interested in when and how the bylaws were altered. His response was immediate. Already on it. The Discord team thinks we can prove document tampering. I smiled for the first time that day. No debt. My grandma says Mrs. Dorsey makes the best lavender shortbread cookies in 3 counties. Just get her better. That's payment enough. Dawn broke with a clarity that seemed almost mocking given the chaos about to unfold. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night coordinating with Jason, Reed, and the hospital staff. Evelyn's condition had stabilized somewhat, but the doctors were insistent she needed to be transferred to Mercy Memorial's cardiac unit as soon as possible. The helicopter was scheduled to land at 9:30. My phone buzzed with a text from Liam. Check your email. Found concrete proof of bylaw tampering. Metadata shows Audra edited the PDF herself last year. Discord team found her digital signature embedded in the file properties. I quickly checked my email, finding screenshots showing not only the document's edit history but also comments Audra had left, including one that read, "Remove medical override clause. Too much potential for resident defiance." I arrived at the park at 8:15 to survey the situation. What I found was both expected and shocking. Audra had transformed a corner of the public park into what looked like a protest headquarters, complete with folding tables, signs reading "Protect our community from noise, pollution," and about 20 determined-looking Briarwood Point residents sipping coffee from matching HOA-branded travel mugs. Audra herself was easy to spot, her sequin teal caftan glittering in the morning sunlight as she paced back and forth, bullhorn in hand. I kept my distance, using my car as cover while I texted Jason with an update. Target area compromised, proceeding with Plan B. Plan B involved landing in a different section of the park, farther from the road, but still accessible by my SUV. Reed arrived shortly after, handing over a manila envelope. Bank statements, transaction records, and photos, he explained quietly. Audra's been siphoning HOA funds for personal expenses, mostly home decor, if you can believe it. My phone buzzed again with another text from Liam. Just discovered something huge. HOA bank statements show regular transfers to Fenton Consulting LLC. Traced through public records, it's registered to someone named Madison Fenton in Arizona. Any relation to Audra? I texted back, possibly her daughter. Can you find out anything about Madison? His response came seconds later. On it. Preliminary results show she's running for city council in Phoenix. At 9:15, Blythe arrived with extensive camera equipment. Live streaming today, she explained. Figure the more public eyes on this situation, the better. I showed her Liam's discoveries. This is gold, she said. Not just the doctored bylaws, but the money trail to her daughter's political campaign? That could be actual campaign finance violations. My phone buzzed again. Liam sending a screenshot of Madison Fenton's campaign website, which prominently featured her as a third-generation community leader with a passion for neighborhood integrity. At precisely 9:28, the distinctive thrum of helicopter rotors became audible. Audra reacted immediately, her voice rising to a shriek through the bullhorn. "They're coming! Form a human chain!" Her supporters scrambled to follow her instructions, creating a ragged line across what they assumed would be the landing zone. What they didn't realize was that Jason was approaching from the opposite direction. Circling around to our secondary location, the helicopter appeared over the tree line, its downwash creating ripples across the park's small pond. The helicopter touched down smoothly on the flat area we had designated, its rotors slowing but not stopping. A hot landing, minimizing time on the ground. Everything happened quickly after that. The paramedics arrived with Evelyn on a stretcher, transferring directly from their ambulance to the helicopter. I supervised the move, checking her vital signs as we settled her safely inside. The entire process took less than 3 minutes. As the helicopter prepared for takeoff, I spotted Audra charging across the park, bullhorn raised like a weapon. "This is a violation of multiple ordinances," she screeched, though the sound was largely drowned out by the helicopter's engines. The downdraft knocked her backward slightly, mussing her carefully arranged hair and sending her clipboard skittering across the grass. The helicopter lifted off without further incident, carrying Evelyn safely toward specialized care. I watched it disappear before turning to face the wrath of Audra Fenton. She was already on her phone, gesticulating wildly. I noticed Liam had arrived. A slender young man with glasses furiously typing on his laptop, coordinating with his online legal team in real time. Within minutes, 2 police cruisers pulled into the park. Audra practically ran to meet them. The officers listened impassively as Audra launched into a breathless account of trespassing and community terrorism. When she finally paused, the senior officer turned to me. "Sir, can you explain what's happening here?" I identified myself as a medical professional and began to outline the situation, emphasizing Evelyn's critical condition and the obstruction of ground ambulance access. Before I could finish, Audra interrupted. "He pushed me. When I tried to stop this illegal activity, he physically assaulted me." The accusation was so blatantly false that for a moment I could only stare at her in disbelief. Several witnesses immediately protested, including Reed, but the damage was done. The younger officer moved toward me, his hand moving to his cuffs. "Sir, I'm going to need you to put your hands behind your back while we sort this out." The absurdity of the situation hit me full force as cold metal closed around my wrists. I was being detained for saving a woman's life. As the officer recited my rights, I caught Blythe's eye and nodded slightly. "Post it now," I said quietly. My heart pounded as I sat in the back of the cruiser, but I forced myself to remain calm. Through the window, I could see Liam approaching the officers, laptop in hand, apparently showing them something on his screen. Then something shifted. People were looking at their phones, then at Audra, then back at their phones. Blythe had posted not just today's video, but a comprehensive package. The footage of Audra knocking over Evelyn's birdhouse, her false accusations, the evidence of bylaw tampering, and most damning of all, a Zoom recording showing Audra discussing with a developer how to transition Briarwood Point toward a more profitable demographic, once certain problem residents had been encouraged to relocate. Minutes later, the cruiser door opened and the officer removed my handcuffs. "Sorry about that, sir. We've received some clarifying evidence." Liam gave me a thumbs up. "We got her," he said quietly. The Discord team found the complete Zoom recording in a cloud backup. She's been planning to force out older residents like Mrs. Dorsey to sell to a developer who wants to build luxury condos. "This is defamation," Audra shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Blythe and Liam. "I'll sue you for every penny you have." But her threats fell flat in the face of such clear evidence. The senior officer was now questioning her about the false police report. Reed appeared at my side. "Helicopter landed safely at Mercy. Evelyn's in good hands now." As she was escorted to the second cruiser, still hurling threats, I caught Reed's eye. "I think it's time we finished this," I said quietly. "The evidence you gathered about the HOA funds, let's put it to use." Reed nodded. "Emergency HOA meeting tonight, 7 p.m. at the clubhouse." The community clubhouse was packed for the emergency HOA meeting. Word had spread rapidly about Audra's detainment, the helicopter drama, and rumors of financial misconduct. Every chair was filled, with residents standing along the walls. Audra's inner circle huddled near the front, looking uncomfortable. I sat with Reed and Blythe. the manila envelope of financial documents resting on the table. Liam had joined us, his laptop open and connected to a Discord channel, where law students were still digging through public records, providing real-time updates on Audra's financial and political connections. At precisely 7 o'clock, the door burst open and Audra swept in, having been released from police questioning. She had changed into a purple pantsuit adorned with sequins, the fabric catching the light with every movement. Her makeup had been hastily reapplied, giving her face a mask-like quality. "I apologize for the delay," she announced, marching to the head of the table. "Some malicious individuals have been spreading falsehoods about me." She shot a venomous glare in my direction, then tapped her gavel-like paperweight. "This emergency meeting will now come to order. First item, disciplinary action against Clayton Merritt for numerous violations, including today's reckless helicopter incident." "Before we vote on that motion," I said, standing, "I believe there are some financial matters that require the association's attention." Audra's expression froze. "That's not on the agenda," she snapped. "We're discussing your violations, not financial matters." I smiled pleasantly. "I think you'll find this directly relevant." I nodded to Blythe, who connected her tablet to the projector. The first slide appeared. Briarwood Point HOA Financial Analysis. Discrepancies and unauthorized expenditures. 2023-2024. Audra's face paled. What followed was methodical and devastating. Reed and I had organized the financial documents to tell a clear story of misappropriation. Bank statements showed transfers from the HOA account to Fenton Consulting, LLC, disguised as payments for community services. Liam stood up. "Through public records, we've confirmed that Fenton Consulting, LLC is registered to Madison Fenton in Phoenix, Arizona," he explained, showing screenshot. "Records indicate that Madison Fenton is currently running for city council there, and these transfers, totaling over $15,000, coincide perfectly with campaign filing deadlines." Blythe advanced to the next slides, showing receipts for Audra's home renovations that matched community improvement expenditures. "But the financial irregularities are just part of a larger pattern," she continued, queuing up the most damning evidence, the Zoom recording. "This is a conversation between Ms. Fenton and representatives from Sunbelt Development Corporation from 3 months ago." The video began playing, showing Audra speaking to 2 men in business suits. "Once we've cleared out the problematic residents, mostly the older ones on fixed incomes who can't afford the increased fees we'll implement, Sunbelt can begin the initial purchase offers," Audra was saying. "I've already started the process by removing certain individuals from community priority lists, making it less comfortable for them to stay." One of the men nodded. "And you're confident you can deliver at least 70% of the properties by next fiscal year?" Audra smiled. "Absolutely. Between the strategic fine increases, selective enforcement of regulations, and the special assessments I've planned, most of the targets will be looking to sell by summer." The room had gone completely silent. Audra lunged for the projector cable, but Reed intercepted her. That's completely fake," she sputtered, but her face had gone ashen. Liam calmly pulled up the digital authentication report. "The video's metadata and digital signature have been verified by 2 independent forensic analysts," he stated. "It hasn't been altered." "These documents are clearly forged," Audra managed, her voice quavering. "Clayton is trying to deflect attention from his own violations." She turned to her accountant. "Harold will confirm that all HOA expenditures have been properly documented." Harold shifted uncomfortably. I simply processed the paperwork you provided, Miss Fenton. I can't verify the legitimacy of the vendors or services." Her expression hardened. "That's literally your job, Harold." I continued. "There's one more thing this association should know." Blythe queued up the final piece of evidence, a video showing Audra and Harold removing ballots from the election box and replacing them with different ones. Someone gasped. Another muttered, "She rigged the election?" Audra's face had gone completely white. For months, Ms. Fenton has used this association as her personal fiefdom, enforcing rules selectively, bullying residents, and stealing funds, not just for personal luxuries, but to finance her daughter's political ambitions. She's been working with developers to push out long-term residents for a luxury condo conversion. I gestured to the screen. "This isn't about garbage cans or lawn ornaments. It's about systematic abuse of power and community trust." Reed stood next. "As a board member, I move to immediately remove Audra Fenton from the position of HOA president, pending investigation into these financial irregularities." I also move that we contact the county prosecutor regarding the potential embezzlement, illegal campaign contributions, and election fraud. Another board member quickly seconded the motion. Liam raised his hand. Additionally, the evidence of conspiracy with developers to devalue properties through selective enforcement may constitute real estate fraud. My professor believes there are grounds for a class action lawsuit on behalf of targeted residents. The vote was swift and decisive. Only Harold and one loyal friend abstained. Everyone else voted in favor. As the results were announced, a police officer entered the clubhouse, accompanied by a county financial crimes investigator. Audra, seeing them, suddenly found her voice again. "This is a witch hunt, a conspiracy," she shrieked, rising from her chair in a flurry of sequins. "You'll all regret this." The investigator approached her. "Miss Fenton, would like to ask you some questions about the HOA finances and your communication with Sunbelt Development. We've already spoken with your daughter in Phoenix, who claims she was unaware of the source of the funds for her campaign." At the mention of her daughter, Audra's expression shifted from defiance to fear. "Madison had nothing to do with this," she said quickly. "That's for our investigation to determine," the officer replied. To everyone's surprise, Audra suddenly bolted for the door. The officer intercepted her before she reached the exit. The last glimpse I had of Audra that evening was of her being escorted to a police car, her purple sequined pantsuit glittering sadly under the parking lot lights, still protesting her innocence to anyone who would listen. 3 weeks passed relatively quietly. Evelyn responded well to treatment and was scheduled to return home. The HOA, under Reed's leadership, had begun democratic reforms with transparent financial practices. A community gardening project had been approved, with Evelyn's prized lavender taking a prominent spot. Audra faced charges of embezzlement, election fraud, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. She had listed her house below market value, hoping for a quick escape. I had returned to work, my administrative review lifted. The residents of Briarwood Point had begun to heal from Audra's reign of terror, with neighbors reconnecting and sharing stories of arbitrary rules they'd endured. Liam's Discord legal team had helped several residents reclaim improperly assessed fines, and a class action lawsuit against Sunbelt Development was taking shape. Reed had commissioned a beautiful wooden sign to replace the pretentious brass plaque, featuring the words, "Briarwood Point, a true community." One Saturday morning, Dr. Patel called. "Clayton, the helicopter rescue was textbook perfect under difficult circumstances. The hospital board wants to use it as a case study for emergency response training. We'd like to do a follow-up demonstration, a community appreciation landing to honor both the medical team and Evelyn's recovery." I sat up straighter, an idea forming. "Where were you thinking of landing?" Dr. Patel replied, "We'll need authorization for a specific location. I understand there's a large open area in your community." The pieces clicked into place. "Actually," I replied, unable to hide my satisfaction, "I have the perfect spot in mind." Audra's open house was scheduled for Sunday afternoon. By Saturday evening, everything was arranged. The hospital had obtained all necessary permits, Blythe had prepared her live streaming equipment, and Reed had ensured all HOA regulations were satisfied. But we'd added a special touch. Evelyn had suggested creating a new community charter to be officially unveiled, with signatures from every household. "It's not enough to just remove the bad," Evelyn had said. "We need to replace it with something good." Sunday dawned clear and bright. By 11:30, potential buyers were arriving at Audra's house. Audra stood on the porch in a subdued floral dress, greeting visitors with a strained smile. Neighbors had begun to gather at the edges of her property, many carrying picnic blankets and folding chairs as if preparing for a celebration. At precisely noon, the distant thrum of helicopter rotors became audible. Audra froze mid-sentence, her head turning toward the sound like a predator sensing danger. The helicopter appeared over the tree line, circling once before beginning its descent toward Audra's spacious front lawn. The potential buyers' expressions shifted from interest to alarm as the massive vehicle approached, its downdraft sending Audra's welcome balloons sailing into the neighbor's yard. "What is happening?" she screeched, abandoning her clients. "Stop! This is private property." The helicopter touched down with precision as the side door opened. A hospital PR team emerged, followed by news crews Blythe had tipped off, and finally, to Audra's horror, Evelyn herself, looking remarkably recovered. She wore a simple blue dress accented with a sprig of lavender, waving to the gathering crowd. From my position near the street, I could see Audra's potential buyers backing away toward their cars. Inside Audra's house, Her 4 parrots had been driven to a frenzy by the noise, flying frantically around their cages. Most striking was what emerged next. Reed and 2 other neighbors, carrying the new community sign and charter, draped ceremoniously in blue cloth. This wasn't just about embarrassing Audra, it was about reclaiming the community's soul. "What is the meaning of this?" Audra demanded, storming toward me. I smiled pleasantly, handing her the permits. "Community appreciation event fully authorized by the county and the hospital. We're celebrating Evelyn's recovery and the successful emergency response that saved her life," she sputtered. "You planned this deliberately, to ruin my open house." I maintained my composure. "The hospital chose the date. I simply suggested your lawn as the landing zone, given your previous interest in helicopter regulations." Blythe's live stream was in full swing. And here we are, folks, witnessing a beautiful moment of community celebration, and perhaps a touch of poetic justice, as Evelyn Dorsey returns to the neighborhood where her life was nearly lost due to HOA obstruction. What you're seeing now is the unveiling of Briarwood Point's new community charter, signed by every household. Reed and his team had set up a small podium where Evelyn stood to address the gathered community. 3 weeks ago, I nearly lost my life because bureaucracy was valued over humanity, she said, her voice stronger than before. Today, we're not just celebrating my recovery, but the recovery of our community's heart and purpose. This charter is our promise to never allow rules to overshadow compassion again. The applause was thunderous, drowning out Audra's continued protests. Audra made one last attempt to regain control, marching toward the helicopter pilot with a clipboard. "I'm documenting this intrusion. You'll be hearing from my attorney." The pilot simply handed her another copy of the permits. "Everything's in order, ma'am." Audra's face flushed red. "This is all your fault," she shrieked at me. "You've ruined everything." 2 police officers approached from behind her. "Miss Fenton, we received a call about a disturbance. Is there a problem here?" She spun around. "Yes, this helicopter is trespassing on my property." The officer examined the permits and shook his head. "Everything appears to be in order. Also, the county prosecutor asked us to remind you that your release terms prohibit leaving the state until your trial concludes. Your agent mentioned you were planning to move to Arizona next week?" The last bit of fight drained from Audra as her escape plan was discovered. The ceremony continued with the installation of the new community sign and charter at the neighborhood entrance, visible from Audra's front yard, a permanent reminder of how her reign had ended. The following week, Evelyn returned home, her recovery progressing well. The community garden flourished, with Evelyn's lavender becoming a favorite gathering spot. One evening, about a month after the lawn landing, I was helping Evelyn plant lavender seedlings in decorative pots, gifts she planned to give to each household. "You know," she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief, "I hear the HOA in Maple Hollow makes Audra look like a Girl Scout. My niece says the president had someone's dog impounded for being 1 inch taller than the pet height restrictions." I laughed, shaking my head as I finished potting another lavender plant. "Some people should never be given clipboards or gavels," I replied. "Power corrupts, and HOA power corrupts absolutely." I watched her arrange the potted plants in neat rows, a tired grin breaking across my face as I considered what we'd all been through. Reaching down, I picked up a small metal flamingo that had somehow survived the purge of Audra's lawn, perhaps blown into Evelyn's garden during the helicopter landing. Instead of throwing it away, I pressed it into the soil of a fresh lavender pot, the gaudy pink metal creating a strange but fitting contrast with the delicate purple flowers. "A reminder," I explained when Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Not of Audra, but of how easily power can become about controlling others rather than serving them." She nodded, understanding immediately. "Every garden needs a little whimsy," she replied, "and every community needs someone willing to stand up when rules become more important than people." The new Briarwood Point thrived in the months that followed. Audra eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges, paying substantial restitution to the HOA. Her house sold to a young family who quickly integrated into the community. The developer's plans for luxury condos were permanently shelved, and instead the community approved modest improvements to the playground and senior walking paths. Evelyn's lavender flourished, becoming something of a neighborhood symbol. So remember, folks, when the Audras of the world try to rule with clipboards and pettiness, sometimes you need to think outside the box, or above it in a helicopter. What's your HOA horror story? Share it below. I have a feeling we could all use a good laugh and maybe some creative solutions, because in the end, it's not about revenge. It's about building the kind of community where rescue helicopters are welcomed, neighbors help each other, and the occasional flamingo stands guard over the lavender, reminding us all of what truly matters.
HOA Stories, where neighbors feud, secrets spill, and karma always clocks in. Stick around, we've got receipts.